You don't start overthinking because you're weak. You start because at some point in your life, thinking deeply kept you safe. Overthinking is not a random habit, it's a learned survival response. It begins quietly, almost invisibly. One thought turns into another, then another, until your mind feels like it's trapped in a loop it can't escape. You replay conversations, imagine outcomes that haven't happened, analyze emotions that don't even have names yet. And the strangest part is this: you know it's hurting you, yet you can't stop. Overthinking gives the illusion of control. Your brain tells you that if you think long enough, deeply enough, carefully enough, you'll finally reach certainty. You'll find the perfect answer, avoid the worst outcome, protect yourself from pain. But certainty never arrives. The mind simply moves the goalpost. Every answer creates a new question. Every solution opens 10 new problems. What started as a way to feel safe slowly becomes the very thing that keeps you anxious, restless, and mentally exhausted. At its core, overthinking is driven by fear. Fear of making the wrong decision, fear of being misunderstood, fear of rejection, failure, loss, or regret. The brain would rather keep you trapped in endless analysis than risk a single wrong move. In psychological terms, this is avoidance disguised as productivity. You feel busy in your head, but you're actually standing still in your life. The dark part of overthinking is how it disconnects you from the present moment. Your body may be sitting in a room, but your mind is always somewhere else, reliving the past or rehearsing the future. You're rarely here. Over time, this creates emotional numbness. Joy feels distant, peace feels unfamiliar. Even when something good happens, your mind immediately asks, how long will this last? Or what could go wrong next? You don't experience life directly anymore. You experience it through a filter of mental noise. Many overthinkers were once emotionally invalidated. They learned early that their feelings weren't safe to express, so they turned inward. Instead of feeling emotions, they analyzed them. Instead of reacting naturally, they calculated responses. Over time, thinking replaced feeling. The mind became a shield, but also a prison. What once protected you now controls you. Overthinking also feeds on perfectionism. You believe there's a perfect version of you who says the right thing, makes the right choice, and never messes up. So before you act, you think and think and think. You wait until you feel ready, but ready never comes. Life passes while you're stuck preparing for it. The brain rewards overthinking because it feels like effort, it feels responsible, it feels intelligent, but emotionally it drains you. Physically, it keeps your nervous system in a constant state of tension. Psychologically, it keeps you stuck in self-doubt. You start questioning your own thoughts, your own memories, even your own identity. You don't trust yourself anymore, so you think more to compensate, and the cycle tightens. Another dark truth: overthinking is often a form of self-punishment. You replay mistakes again and again, as if mentally suffering will somehow make up for them. You criticize yourself in ways you never criticize another human being. Your inner voice becomes harsh, obsessive, relentless, and yet part of you believes you deserve it. The reason you can't stop overthinking isn't because you lack discipline. It's because your mind believes this habit is necessary for survival. Letting go feels dangerous. Silence feels uncomfortable. Stillness feels like losing control. So the mind stays loud, not because it wants peace, but because it fears what might surface without noise. Breaking free doesn't start by fighting thoughts. That only creates more resistance. It starts by understanding what your overthinking is trying to protect you from. What pain are you avoiding? What feeling are you afraid to sit with? Overthinking is not the problem, it's the symptom. When you begin to notice your thoughts instead of obeying them, something shifts. You realize that not every thought deserves your attention. Not every fear is a warning. Not every imagined outcome is real. Slowly, you learn that uncertainty is not a threat, it's a part of being alive. Overthinking doesn't disappear overnight. It loosens its grip gradually, as trust in yourself returns, as you learn to feel instead of analyze, as you accept that life cannot be fully controlled, only experienced. And maybe the most uncomfortable truth of all is this: the moment you stop overthinking, you become vulnerable. You risk making mistakes, you risk feeling pain, but you also risk feeling alive again. Overthinking slowly reshapes the way you see yourself. You stop trusting your first instincts. You doubt your emotional reactions. You question whether your feelings are valid or exaggerated. The mind becomes a courtroom where every thought must be proven, defended, and cross-examined. Nothing is allowed to simply exist. And in that constant self-interrogation, you lose touch with who you are beneath the noise. One of the most damaging effects of overthinking is how it steals your sense of agency. You feel as though life is happening to you, not through you. Decisions feel heavy, even small ones. You delay, hesitate, second guess. And when you finally choose something, your mind immediately starts imagining all the ways it could have gone differently. You're never fully present in your own choices. You're always standing slightly outside your life, watching yourself live it. Overthinking also has a way of distorting memory. You don't remember events as they happened, you remember them as you analyze them. Moments become edited, replayed, exaggerated. A small awkward interaction turns into proof that you're socially broken. A single mistake becomes evidence of a deeper flaw. The past is no longer a teacher, it becomes a weapon your mind uses against you. There is a quiet loneliness that comes with overthinking. Even when you're surrounded by people, you feel alone inside your head. Conversations don't end when they end, they follow you home. You replay words, tones, facial expressions, searching for hidden meanings. You wonder what people really think of you. You crave reassurance, but even reassurance doesn't stick. The mind finds a way to doubt that too. Many overthinkers confuse awareness with wisdom. They believe that because they see all possibilities, all risks, all angles, they are being mature and responsible. But awareness without grounding turns into anxiety. Insight without self-compassion turns into self-attack. Intelligence without emotional regulation becomes exhaustion. The dark psychology of overthinking is that it feeds on identity. You don't just think too much, you become the one who thinks too much. It becomes part of how you define yourself. Letting go then feels like losing a piece of who you are. Silence feels empty because your identity was built on noise. Overthinking also thrives in unresolved emotions. Feelings that were never expressed don't disappear, they transform into thoughts. Anger becomes rumination. Sadness becomes analysis. Fear becomes prediction. The mind takes over because the body was never allowed to release. And the longer this continues, the harder it becomes to tell the difference between intuition and anxiety. You might notice that your best moments happen when your mind is quiet, when you're deeply engaged, emotionally open, or simply present. But instead of trusting those moments, you analyze them afterward. You ask why they happened, how to recreate them, how to control them. And in doing so, you push them further away. The truth is, overthinking is not a thinking problem. It's a trust problem, a lack of trust in yourself, a lack of trust in life, a lack of trust that you'll be okay even if things don't go perfectly. So the mind stays alert, hypervigilant, always scanning for danger that may never come. Healing doesn't mean eliminating thought. It means changing your relationship with it, learning to let thoughts pass without grabbing onto them, allowing uncertainty without immediately trying to resolve it, feeling emotions without translating them into questions that have no answers. At first, this feels terrifying. The mind resists. It creates louder thoughts, stronger doubts, more what-ifs. But if you don't engage, something surprising happens. The noise begins to soften, not because you forced it to stop, but because it no longer needs to scream to be heard. You begin to realize that peace doesn't come from understanding everything. It comes from accepting that you never will. Life is not a puzzle to be solved. It's an experience to be lived. And the more you try to control it with your mind, the further you drift from it. Overthinking fades as presence grows. As you return to your body, as you breathe without analyzing the breath, as you act without rehearsing every outcome, you don't become careless, you become alive. And maybe the most freeing realization of all is this: you don't need to stop overthinking to be okay. You just need to stop believing every thought that tells you you're not. Over time, you start to notice something subtle but powerful. The moments when you suffer the most are not the moments when something bad is actually happening. They are the moments when nothing is happening, and your mind fills the silence with imagined threats, future regrets, and past mistakes. Overthinking turns empty space into emotional pain. It convinces you that stillness is dangerous, that if you stop analyzing, something will fall apart. This is why overthinking often gets worse at night. When distractions fade, the mind finally has room to speak, and because it has been ignored all day, it speaks loudly. Thoughts stack on top of each other with no clear beginning or end. You try to solve your life at 2 a.m., forgetting that exhaustion makes every problem feel permanent and every fear feel true. Another dark layer of overthinking is how it blurs the line between preparation and self-punishment. You tell yourself you're just being careful, just thinking ahead, just trying to avoid mistakes. But deep down, there's a harshness in the way you think. You replay conversations not to learn, but to criticize yourself. You imagine future scenarios not to prepare, but to brace for pain. The mind becomes a place where you are constantly on trial. Overthinking also disconnects you from your body. You live in your head so much that you stop noticing physical signals: tension, fatigue, hunger, emotional overwhelm. The body tries to speak through anxiety, restlessness, tightness in the chest. Instead of listening, the mind explains it away, analyzes it, or panics about it. This creates a loop where the body feels unsafe and the mind feels out of control. Many people who overthink are deeply sensitive. They notice patterns others miss. They feel things intensely. But instead of being taught how to regulate that sensitivity, they learn to suppress it. So the feelings didn't disappear, they went underground. Overthinking is often what sensitivity looks like when it's not given permission to exist openly. There's also grief hidden inside overthinking. Grief for choices not made, versions of yourself not lived, words not said. When life moves forward without closure, the mind tries to go back and rewrite the story. It believes that if it thinks hard enough, it can fix the past or protect the future. But all it really does is trap you between what was and what might be. The turning point comes when you realize that your thoughts are not asking for answers. They're asking for safety. Overthinking is the mind's attempt to create certainty in a world that offers none. When you stop fighting the thoughts and start offering yourself a sense of grounding, through presence, breath, movement, honesty, the thoughts slowly lose their grip. You begin to see that not every thought deserves attention. Some thoughts are just noise. Some are old echoes of fear. Some are habits, not truths. And you don't have to argue with them to let them go. You can notice them, acknowledge them, and return to what's real in front of you. Freedom from overthinking doesn't arrive as silence. It arrives as space. Space between you and your thoughts. Space where you can choose not to engage. Space where you can feel without explaining, act without rehearsing, exist without constantly monitoring yourself. And in that space, something unexpected happens. You start trusting yourself again, not because you have all the answers, but because you realize you don't need them. And as that trust slowly returns, you stop needing your mind to explain everything before you move. You begin acting from a quieter place, not impulsively, not recklessly, but honestly. You notice that most of the things you feared never actually required the level of analysis you gave them. They required presence. They required courage. They required you to show up imperfectly instead of staying trapped in thought. Overthinking loses power the moment you stop using it as your identity. You are not your thoughts, you are the one who notices them. And that shift, small but profound, changes everything. Thoughts still come, but they no longer decide your worth. They no longer define your future. They pass like weather instead of becoming your climate. You start to feel life again in simple ways, in moments when you choose without rehearsing, when you speak without scripting, when you rest without guilt. These moments may feel unfamiliar at first, even uncomfortable, because your nervous system is used to constant alertness. But slowly, safety begins to feel possible without constant thinking. The darkest part of overthinking was never the thoughts themselves. It was the belief that you needed them to survive. Once that belief weakens, the mind relaxes, not completely, not permanently, but enough for you to breathe again. You realize that peace was never something you had to figure out. It was something you had to allow. And maybe that's the quiet truth behind overthinking. It ends not when you finally think the right thought, but when you stop trying to protect yourself from life and start trusting yourself to live it. The mind grows quiet when it no longer has to defend you from everything. And in that quiet, you don't disappear. You return.